So as we can see, fundamental duties comes under Part 4A of the Indian Constitution, and there's only one article for fundamental duties, Article 51A. From Article 52, it's the states, Part 5, and then we learned about Directive Principle of State Policy, Article 36 to Article 51, right? Part 4 of the Indian Constitution. Part 1 is Article 1 to 4, Part 2 is Article 5 to 11, Part 3 is Article 12 to 35, Part 4 is Article 36 to Article 51, and Part 4A, Part 4 is Article 36 to 51, Part 4A is 51A, and then Part 5 is 52. They had to squeeze it in between, right after fundamental directive principles of state policy. They had to squeeze it in, which is why they added this Part 4A. Now, what are fundamental duties? Whereas directive principles of state policy, it was for the states. Okay, it was the guideline for the states, and fundamental duties means guideline for the citizens, for us. Okay, that's a very basic definition. Fundamental duties are the moral obligations of every citizen towards the nation, and it is our duty to also not only be protected by the rights, but also to respect people's rights. It is also our duty to promote harmony, to promote peace. It is also our duty to ensure that India is stable. It is also our duty to make sure that you are responsible, you are a civil person, that you maintain the basic human civility. It's also your responsibility to have the right conscience, and so forth. Your duty as a citizen of India, what makes a citizen of India an ideal citizen? These are the duties that make you an ideal citizen. If you follow all the duties, it means you are an ideal citizen. So, fundamental duties are moral obligations, and it is explicitly mentioned that it's an obligation, but a moral one. Moral one. Okay? Now, as we can see, the key point, fundamental duties are not directly enforceable by courts, but they guide responsible citizenship. So if you do not follow these fundamental duties, let's say, what does that make you? Does it make you a criminal? Does it make you an outlaw? It doesn't, okay? It doesn't. There are various crimes that you can commit, which are mentioned in other laws, but this in particular is just an encouragement, it's just a moral obligation towards your country for every citizen. They promote patriotism. I think we lag a little bit in patriotism. We lag a little bit in national unity because we have always been stuck in between. We had this discussion on Saturday about the insurgency. That's been a long-standing issue here in Nagaland. So we have always been caught in between. Should we support our Naga brothers and sisters who are part of the insurgency groups in their fight for freedom, in their fight against Indian dominance over Nagaland? Or should we actually look at the other side, the other possibility of being a part of India and continuing to enjoy the benefits that we enjoy to this day? So this is a dilemma that our Naga society has always been stuck in. And when it comes to fundamental duties, we lag a little bit in patriotism. We lag a little bit in national unity as well. But I think we would get a 8 to 9 out of 10 when it comes to civic responsibility, our Naga society. And also upholding constitutional values, I would give it 6 out of 10 because we usually follow our own customary laws, right? So you can relate it to Nagaland this way. Now, if you look at the evolution of fundamental duties, as I mentioned, it wasn't originally in the Indian Constitution. It was added in the year 1976 by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. Okay, it added Part 4A, and then it introduced Article 51A, as you can see. And then these fundamental duties, right, it is based on the Swaran Singh Committee recommendations. Now, for every kind of constitutional amendment, usually what they do is they form a committee, and then after they form a committee, they discuss on that particular issue, and then the committee would give recommendations, a list of recommendations to the Council of Ministers, and then the Council of Ministers will decide which to accept and which not to accept, and they'll lay it down on the Indian Parliament, and the Indian Parliament will vote on it. Right? For some laws, it needs simple majority, and for constitutional amendment, it needs special majority. So a special majority, like I've mentioned, 2/3 of the members present and voting, and then 50% of the total membership of the House. So once the Indian Parliament votes upon it, they can amend the Constitution. So for evolution of fundamental duties, was it special majority or was it simple majority? It was a special majority, okay, since it's directly a constitutional amendment, which is derived from Article 386, which you will learn about. Article 386 gives the central government the power to amend the Constitution. Article 386, they use that power, they invoke that power to amend the Constitution. They formed the committee, Swaran Singh Committee, for drawing out the basic duties of the citizens. And some of the recommendations were accepted, some were rejected, and lastly, this was the final fundamental duties. It added Part 9A in the Indian Constitution. It introduced Article 51A, and it was based on the Swaran Singh Committee recommendations. All these 3 points are extremely important for your preliminary examination, okay? And originally, as of now, how many fundamental duties do we have? We have 11, okay? We have 11 fundamental duties. And originally, in the year 1976, we had only 10 fundamental duties. And the 11th fundamental duty was added by the 86th Constitutional Amendment of 2002. Now, if you guys look back at our previous classes, 86th Amendment Act also added Part 21A of the Fundamental Rights. Article 21A, right? Right to education. We talked about that. It made changes to Directive Principles of State Policy, wherein the Directive Principle of State Policy mentioned about education up to 14 years of age. Now it's only up to 6 years of age in Directive Principles of State Policy. And then they made changes to the fundamental rights. Article 21A, it added right to education. Okay, and along with that, the 86th Constitutional Amendment not only changed the fundamental rights from 14 to 6 years, and they shifted the 6 to 14 to fundamental rights, as well as they added a duty, the 11th fundamental duty of parents and guardians to provide education to children aged 6 to 14 years. Not only it is a duty of the state, which is mentioned in fundamental rights, it is also the duty of parents, as mentioned in fundamental duties. So in every way, they're trying to ensure that children are given education at least between 6 to 14 years. Okay, and it's explicitly mentioned free and compulsory education, which is why, according to the new education policy, up to 14 years of age, class 8 तक तो पास कर दिया ना कि हुई आजिकली तो मोला टाइम दे तो मुई लगा टाइम दे तो फेल हुई लगी से I don't know तो वाला टाइम तो हम भी 2013 14 15 16 टाइम दे क्लास की मन था कि से लेकिन आजिकली तो बच्चा का क्लास 8 तक तो इन्हीं पास कर दे. Okay, free and compulsory education for children between 6 to 14 years of age. It's existent at this present age. Now, fundamental duties are under Article 51A. Can you guys go through from 1 to 11? Very interesting duties. Respect the Constitution, national flag, and national anthem, which I'm sure all of you do. cherish the ideals of the freedom struggle, protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of India, defend the country and render national service, promote harmony and respect the dignity of women, preserve India's composite cultural heritage, protect the environment and show compassion for living creatures, develop scientific temper, humanism and the spirit of inquiry, safeguard public property and reject violence, strive for excellence in all spheres, provide education to children between 6 to 14, parents and guardians. Now, you have to memorize all these 11 fundamental duties. These are indispensable. Okay, fundamental rights, directive principles of state policy, and fundamental duties. All these three, you have to memorize it. It's something that you cannot avoid. You are going to apply this every time there's a question asked in the mains examination, any kind of social issue. You will find that you can use fundamental duties in almost every issue. The state doesn't want to be told what to do, but the state likes it, which means the state represent the teachers checking your answer papers, they represent the state, right? So the state, it doesn't like being told what to do, but it really likes when you as a citizen talks about the duty of the citizen. So in this case, fundamental duties, if you use extracts from fundamental duties to help explain your answers, it would fetch you extra marks. I always do that, okay? In any kind of scenario, any kind of question that they ask, I always try to squeeze in fundamental duties. And even about the mains answer writing structure, I've told you guys that ahead of intro, you can give an analogy. You can also give a quotation, right? So in this quotation, if you mention, let's say fundamental duty number 1, this and that, you will get extra marks, okay? That's how the one checking your answer papers knows that you are special, you are different from the rest, you actually worked, you actually understand what it means to be an officer. So fundamental duties, memorization, compulsory. Fundamental rights, memorization, compulsory. And directive principles of state policy, memorization, compulsory. So these are the features. Fundamental duty is applicable only to Indian citizens. You cannot impose this duty on people who come from outside of India. Okay, it's of moral and civic obligations, mostly non-justiciable. Why do we say mostly non-justiciable? It's entirely non-justiciable, okay, on paper. But it's mostly non-justiciable in the sense that there have been cases in the past when some people were arrested because of their lack of civic responsibility and so forth. But they always related with other laws. We have a lot of laws, okay. We have the PNS law, the Indian Penal Code, the CRPC. You will learn about that, and section so and so, section 155 of Indian Penal Code, and so forth. They use different penal codes. They use different kinds of laws to justify their punishment. But usually, it's because of the violation of certain. For example, somebody burned the national flag. Okay, there's no law in the Indian Constitution that states that anyone who burns the national flag should be punished. Now, why is he being punished? The only mention that we see in the Indian Constitution is fundamental duty, respect the Constitution, national flag, and national anthem. Okay, so in this way, it is technically it shouldn't be the case, but practically, it's mostly non-justiciable. But when we go to the court, we cannot use fundamental duty. The state cannot use fundamental duty to go against you. Okay. The court cannot also legally punish you as a consequence of your inability to follow those fundamental duties. So you can say it's non-justiciable. Fundamental duties, non-justiciable. It promotes a responsible citizenship. I think it's very obvious. It promotes responsible citizenship. It complement fundamental rights. Again, it complement fundamental rights. Now, when it comes to fundamental rights, let's take the example of one. Okay, prohibition of children in factories. Let's say, right against exploitation. Prohibition of children in factories. Okay, let's take the example of prohibition of children in factories. Now, it is your moral and civic obligation to be kind towards children. It is your moral and civic obligation to make sure that children are in a better place they are not being treated, ill-treated, right? So it becomes an obligation on your part to fulfill the fundamental rights as well. So these are correlated. It gives you the right, fundamental rights gives you the right to, as an Indian citizen, but fundamental duties also gives to you, tells you that it is your duty to respect one another, and in that way, we give each other the fundamental rights that we deserve. So in this way, fundamental duty and fundamental rights are related. Rights and duties go together. Fundamental rights, they protect individual freedom, promote civic responsibility, fundamental duties, which means if you are responsible, if you have civic sense, then you respect each other's individual freedom. Okay? So legally enforceable, generally non-enforceable. In the exam, non-enforceable, please don't use the term non-enforceable, okay? Generally, use the term generally non-enforceable. Why again non-enforceable? Which means you are protecting the citizens, and the state doesn't like you defending the citizens so rigidly. You have to use generally non-enforceable, okay? These are all psychological games in the examination. These are all psychological games. You cannot defend the citizen against the state. You cannot say it's entirely non-enforceable, which means the state cannot punish you for not following fundamental duty, which means fundamental duty's value is very feeble, very small, very tiny. So you cannot use the term non-enforceable directly. Use generally non-enforceable. So in every explanation, I use the term generally non-enforceable. And even in Indian polity, okay, Indian polity uses the term generally non-enforceable. And Indian polity was specifically made for UPSC. Never forget that. It was specifically made for UPSC. It wasn't made for college students. Actually, it's a reference book, okay, but we use it as an actual book. It's not backed by facts and figures. It's not based by journalism. It's not backed by research. Okay, these are all books combined by very refined writers, and it's the best polity book that we have here in India. And it mentions generally non-enforceable. So we should follow this. Okay, this is the most important term that I want all of you to remember. It can be enforced in courts, but it cannot be enforced in courts. Fundamental duties, it only guides citizens' behavior. Okay, fundamental rights mostly against state action, but fundamental duties towards the nation and society, us as citizens. Okay. Remember, rights without duties can weaken democracy. This is a very impressive quote that you can use in your exams. Okay, so rights and duties. See, the core, a balanced democracy. These 3 points, whenever they ask you in the examination about rights and duties, the correlation between rights and duties, these are the 3 points that you can expand on. Okay, you can expand on these 3 rights. Number 1, exercise your rights without harming society. Now you have the freedom to listen to music. You have the freedom to listen to music, but you cannot listen to music in such a way that you disturb your neighbor. Volume pura bajana kunba do music bajado. Or some people bike to exhaust kan modify karna ram rati de koloni pura berai mathabi bikhai na. Utuan ramuan ge, it not only annoys us, but it also affects the overall civility of the community, the decorum of the community. So you cannot exercise your rights and harm the society simultaneously. Okay, you can exercise your rights, but you shouldn't harm the society. There are certain duties, specific duties that even the colleges impose. Duties such as pawn shops within the distance of 100 meters shouldn't sell tobacco, pan, and so forth. And it is also your duty as a shopkeeper to do business. That's your right, but it shouldn't affect the decorum, the sanctity of the educational environment. Okay. So this is how you can exercise your rights without harming society, and respect the rights of others while enjoying your own. Okay, you have the right to talk, but you cannot stop other people from talking. Some people are very talkative, and whenever we have conversations, they always come in between, right? That's also one example of how you're enjoying your rights, but you're not letting others enjoy their rights. Very simple example. Since the state protects your rights via the fundamental rights, As a citizen, you should also fulfill your duty towards the nation. Basic human civility, under basic human civility, your mannerism also comes. Okay, picking up the wrappers and putting it in the dustbin, or making sure you don't throw any wrappers at all on the street. That's also a civic duty. Okay, that's also part of human civility. So this is how these 3 points, you can use these 3 points to elaborate on the correlation between rights and duties. These 3 are the core 3 points that is most suitable to expound on. And they are not going to ask you the correlation between rights and duties as a 20 marks question. They are never going to do that. Okay, they're only going to ask you a 5 mark question or 2 marks question. At the most 5 marks. 20 marks ito ekta general topics kan hote. But correlation between rights and duties, these 3 points, you can get it inside your head. You expand on that, maximum marks pai jabo. And Gandhiji on rights and duties. Gandhiji is always mentioned when it comes to fundamental duties. Okay, it is inspired by the words of Mahatma Gandhi. He stressed on duties a lot. Okay, he even considered duty to be above rights. He says the true source of rights is duty. Rights flow from the performance of duties. For example, if you are an Indian citizen and if you do not fulfill your duty of respecting another individual, and if you go and just kill that person, it means that person doesn't have the right to live. So his right to live is dependent on how he is treated by the society. Okay, even if the fundamental rights, they assure all these rights, right to freedom of religion, we have the freedom of religion, but in some places churches are being destroyed, right? So the extent to which you can enjoy your right is directly dependent on how the society treats you. So anyway, fundamental rights, it gives us the power, but also at the same time we are powerless without the overall cooperation of the community. So this is how rights supersede, duties supersede rights, according to Mahatma Gandhi. It says that rights flow from the performance of duties. You should fulfill your duty as a citizen. And he even went to the extent that if you fulfill your duty as an Indian citizen, you don't even need to mention the rights. Automatically ahijay. Okay, it makes sense, right? It makes sense. Responsible citizens create a responsible nation. Very good point said by Mahatma Gandhi. Duties are the foundation of democracy. I cannot argue against that. Okay, I strongly believe in that. Self-realization begins with serving society. If you look at the democratic countries of the world, and if you look at the crime rates and so forth, and even the condition of women, the safety of women, and then the freedom of the press, okay, India is far behind. And if you look at countries like Iceland is an amazing country. It's one of the most peaceful countries that we know. But what makes Iceland a peaceful country? It's not the rights, it's not the duties that they have. It's like we have much. This is like no constitution in the world is as vast as the Indian constitution. But still, Iceland, right? Even though the constitution is very simple, it's a community. Each individual fulfills their duty as a citizen of Iceland. That's a very good example. And you can look at other Scandinavian countries. You will find that they fulfill their duties as citizens. Yati do shikar khan khai, thuk khan pelai, street day. Even when it comes to hygiene and sanitation, it was like funny be mon lai citizen la galdi bisi bak thage re. It was so duty. Now you understand why Gandhi stressed on duty so much. Mon la duty related rights sapi na lagi gwa do sa so. If you fulfill your duty to respect another person, it means that person doesn't even need to have his rights mentioned in the Indian constitution. So that's what Gandhi stressed on. I hope all of you understand Gandhi and his emphasis on duties. Now we have come to the end of fundamental duties. Very brief. These are the important 8 points that you need to remember moving forward. for your examination, they are going to ask you fundamental rights is contained in which part of the Indian Constitution? The answer is Part 4A. And they might also ask which article of the Indian Constitution mentions the fundamental duties? The answer is Article 51A. Okay, and which amendment added fundamental duties to the Constitution of India? 42nd Amendment. And which committee recommended the creation of the addition of fundamental duties? Swaran Singh Committee. Okay, how many fundamental duties did the Indian Constitution originally have? 10 fundamental duties. Okay, the 11th duty of the fundamental duties was added by which amendment? 86th Amendment. And they might also give you 4 to 5 statements. Choose which are right and which are wrong. And so one statement could be fundamental duty is justiciable. So that's wrong. Okay. And citizens only applicability. The legal nature of fundamental duties is that it's non-justiciable, and the applicability. Whom should the fundamental duties be applied on? The citizens. Okay. And whom should the DPSP be applied on? The state. Okay. This is how you must answer in your examination. In this way, full marks by Joe. So quick revision. Part 9A, Article 51A. Remember that 11 duties, right? 11 duties. Originally 10 duties. For the Second Amendment, added the 11th duty, 1976. Okay. I mean that 10 duties were added in 1976. The 11th duty was added by the 86th Amendment. And these are the 4 points that you can memorize when it comes to fundamental duties. Patriotism, discipline, national unity, and responsible citizen. Now let me give you guys one advice, okay? You guys have a lot to study when it comes to NPSC. And you cannot simply study every single thing, all the amendments, all the changes, all the, all the court cases, right? You cannot do all that, okay? You have to pick out. You have to make a choice. And I'm trying to make the choice for you here. When it comes to fundamental duties, it would not take you more than 10 minutes to memorize all these 8 points. And if you have these 8 points memorized, it means you are good to go in your examination. And for your mains, you need the 11 fundamental duties memorized. Okay, you need it for your prelims, but more importantly for your mains. So if you can memorize these 8 points, I am telling you, these 8 points are all that you need to answer any kind of question in preliminary examination related to fundamental duties, because it covers the applicability, it covers the legal nature, it covers the original 10 duties, and then the 11th duty, Part 4A, 51A, right? All these 8 points are extremely important, okay? So